Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Monday at 11:29 a.m., February 22nd. A heck of a day it is. Today was an extraordinary liquidity event. A liquidity event is basically a supply side or demand side imbalance. When there's more sellers than buyers and more buyers than sellers, the price either goes up or down. And clearly this morning the price went down. A lot of potentially macroeconomic factors contribute to events like this. And clearly, when you have a significant period of appreciation, there's persons that still play the buy low, sell high game at the large levels. Clearly, persons, one Bitcoin, two Bitcoin, that's not going to do swings like this. But swings like this happen when there's billions of dollars being liquidated. So, this is a very legacy financial mentality, especially at the scale that was applied. And they still do that. They buy low, sell high. And then the new paradigm that has emerged with regard to providing liquidity and actually generating meaningful yield is still new to those types of players, particularly because there is no yield in the legacy financial system. They have no idea what's going on in the DeFi space and have barely started to scratch the surface on what the fuck Bitcoin is. So that's why we see volatility like this. My expectation is volatility like this will significantly decrease over time, as a long time potentially, as old people, the old persons, the old crowd in legacy financials actually realize that what they're doing is a waste of time, and they just don't understand at all what's happening in the DeFi space. It's just outside of anything they're used to, outside of their frame of reference, and just outside of anything they even consider. It just doesn't come to their mind. Today's title, today's liquidity event, and turning vol into percent yield. Vol referring to volatility. And yeah, today's a good day to go over these topics. Today's episode is sponsored by Change Angel, the non custodial swap exchange for social goods. Stop depositing on exchanges, not your keys, not your crypto, non custodial, DeFi, or nothing at all. Bam! Let's pop it over to the main screen and see who's in the stream. We got Outsider. I don't think it's over yet either, but that's the point. Doesn't matter. More vol, please. It's irrelevant when you have a structured portfolio that is restrictive of downside and capping of upside and capitalizing on vol. And that's what, at least what I focus on. And I encourage everyone to, even if you have a relatively small portfolio, which is something some folks were alluding to on Twitter that I could talk to. And it's a matter of lifestyle, living within one's means and how they allocate the value they generate from turning time into money, work, aka work, and how that value is allocated and accumulated and deployed. Charlie, my man, what got hurt the least today? We can take a look at CoinGecko real quick. Dude, seriously, some stuff ripped today. Why it ripped, I don't freaking know. Let me give it a second. Crypto is up 64%, crypto.com. I don't freaking know. This stuff is ripping, and it just shows you that, there's a large market, and some things go up, some things go down. It's not like, the legacy financial market, you'll talk about like tech equities versus energy, for example. So we don't have that kind of, very obvious separation in market asset classification, but that's clearly the case here. We have a very large part of the market that was overly inflated, and a large part of the market where market actors felt it was underinflated. And what happened is a mean regression. Value transfers from overinflated assets to underinflated assets. And clearly, that is exactly what these numbers tell us. Market actors feel that these assets were relatively uninflated compared to other assets. And hey, that's the way it is. And that's exactly why I tell everyone to look at the energy sector, particularly mining, metals, and no doubt crypto. But the mining and metals, with regard to legacy financials, is where I look, particularly mining over metals. I think those particular equities have 10 years that they're just going to keep producing returns. What's up 1,000% so far in 2021, you'll see up 10,000% in 2023 and up 30,000% in 2025. So that's my expectation there. ZRX and NU, my man, good stuff. ZRX is big stuff. They're just the volume on the network is just vertical at this point, and Bancor is extraordinary. And I expect Kyber to stretch its legs inevitably as well. Not quite sure about NU. I don't know about it. Not sure why we're seeing prices bounce so much once ETH dropped 1850. Haven't cleared 18 up yet. Yeah, it's all good. But Ethereum is it's a macro crypto asset. It has the network effect and it's entrenched in the system. And what's its value prop? It's gas. You need gas to operate in the DeFi space to extract significant yield and facilitate monetary velocity, and that's just the bottom line. BNT since yesterday outfield, it was around $6, currently pumping at 620. Yeah, it's because it solves a significant purpose in the portfolio. That's what we'll get into. I want to talk about the three main categories of a portfolio that I see as being most risk considerate. Digilight in the house. Matt's in the house. Aloha. Yeah, I live in Florida, so I appreciate your scenery. But we have good scenery here too. But I know the vast majority of persons in the continental United States definitely appreciate both my and your scenery. My man. Bit is in the house. Always a pleasure. Craig. My technical master. My man. Igor in the house. Charlie G. Barry, smash the likes. 45 people in the stream, 16 likes. We can do better. John McGuire's in the house. What are some concepts for turning vol into yield? We're gonna hit that. Let me just get to everyone in the stream. Lewis is in the house. Always a pleasure. Dude, can never say it enough. Not your keys, not your crypto, especially now. That is damn right. Carlos, Noah is saving my portfolio. We talk strategy here. I will never say exactly what to do with your money. I will never recommend or advocate for a particular asset, but I will always advocate to protect your gains, protect the downside, expose the upside, and capitalize on volatility, because that is portfolio strategy, and that is what we are sorely lacking in the broad crypto space is proper education. Look on YouTube and you see the horrible shilling. Bitcoin to the moon. Bitcoin's going to crash. What a ridiculous way to operate. There's no education in that. Charlie G, yeah, the intro is pretty good. It's literally it rolls off the tongue at this point. Ear ends in the house, always a pleasure. Mohammed, best Twitter account to follow, my man. I really appreciate it. It's come a long way. Clearly, the way I'm able to express ideas and concepts verbally has grown over the last year at this point. And the Twitter account, the content has also evolved as well. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. You might just look at one of my original streams and you'd be like, is that the same person? Yeah, this is definitely 51 people at this point, Lewis. Incredible. It's good to see people that are interested in how to do things differently, how to do things with well thought out strategy. It is basically a methodology that will facilitate a capacity to make better decisions. And that's what's most important. For instance, how do I know? Everyone's running around. You had the Gwei at 1,000+ Gwei for a transaction this morning. People were probably throwing around like $1,000, $1,500 for transactions, and I'm sitting here like, cool. I didn't do a damn thing this morning. I'm just saying. Just sat back and like volatility. Woo! Very exciting. Curve is interesting. Avoid permanent loss since pools are matching pairs. Yeah, Curve is dollars, man. So you're getting like dollar yield, and the Curve asset and VE Curve is potentially an enormous, ridiculous cash flow in the coming years. Imagine a 10x or 100x an increase in volume through the platform. VE Curve is just potentially a job. Potentially will replace work. Have you organized access for your family to your ledger portfolio when you might pass? I don't want to think about that, but my wife talks about it all the time. Yeah, we talk about that. That is an important concept to consider, or reality to consider, rather. Barracks in the house, first Noah live event. Always a pleasure. I am here and I will be here. This is something I enjoy very much. Charlie, very valuable stream. Can't thank you enough. You're all very welcome. All right, so the original comment that obviously caught my eye is very consistent with something we should talk about is the three-part portfolio strategies that mean more than holding assets long. So you're going to hold an asset that produces no yield. Let's say, I don't want to even pick on an asset. So you hold an asset, you buy it low, you sell it high. You have to do work. You have to know when to sell it high, when to buy it low. And that's work. And you already have a job. I have a job. I don't want to put in that extra work. So the three portfolio assets that have emerged in the crypto space in 1 year's time, because this all started in May of last year, are well, actually, Bancor is their new protocol is new, so there's two portfolio assets that have emerged since last year, and one relatively new is double-sided pools and double-sided pools paired with dollar-denominated stablecoins. So, and there's very different characteristics and meaning to the two different types of double-sided pools. So, if you pair an asset with a dollar stablecoin, you're talking about exposure to a single asymmetrically appreciating asset. And as let's say Ethereum and DAI, if Ethereum decreases in value, that means more Ethereum is going to be in the pool because people are selling it in exchange for DAI, which means as Ethereum decreases in value, you're actually going to have more Ethereum and vice versa as well. So as Ethereum increases in value, you're going to have less Ethereum in your Ethereum DAI pool, which means basically you're going to have muted upside, restricted downside, and the pool is going to produce a recurring revenue stream. And we could delve into, if we have time, how these pools are generating the incentives, which is downright fascinating. So I'm going to keep it there. We've talked about it a lot, and that's monetary policy and inflationary and deflationary forces that they code into the protocol. But the yield is what you're exchanging the upside potential of the asset for. So if you hold a bunch of Ethereum, 10 grand worth, and a pool is generating 80% in incentivized returns, the odds are you're going to generate about 80%, $8,000 per year in revenue. And that is what you have to focus on. You don't focus that you have, 10 grand worth of Ethereum and Ethereum goes 10x and you lose out on $90,000 of returns. You have to retrain your mentality with regard to how you view the functionality of your portfolio. Sure, that'd be great if you make an extra 90 grand, but you just need to focus on $8,000 per year. You've put your assets to work. And now let's talk about like a $10,000 portfolio. Sure, 8 grand you're not going to be able to live on, but you're working. So you're generating money and you're accumulating money, which you could then add to increase the size of the position. So instead of spending the money you make, take the money you make, grow the position that's generating yield, add to it, allocate to it, grow it, and use the money that your position is generating. So don't spend the money you make directly, use the money your money makes. So you're turning your money that you make when you work into an employee. And over time, you're growing your recurring revenue stream. So Ethereum and DAI, so that's or Ethereum USDC, Ethereum Tether, whatever. Point being, that is how that kind of pair functions. Now, interestingly enough, when you pair, let's say, Ethereum and Bitcoin, the dynamic is a bit different. Clearly, you're exposed to two asymmetrically appreciating assets with varying volatility. The way that pool operates is slightly different and also more difficult to conceptually describe. Basically, same principle applies, but it's relative because it's relative to either one asset or another, appreciating or depreciating relative to the other asset. The stablecoin makes it easy to describe because the stablecoin is not appreciating or depreciating. So, with regard to a double-sided pool, Ethereum and Bitcoin, for example, it's the relative degree of appreciation or depreciation. And you will have more contents in the pool for the asset that depreciates the least. So if Bitcoin is outperforming, you're going to have more Ethereum and vice versa. But what's pertinent is that you're exposed to two asymmetrically appreciating assets. So as Bitcoin and Ethereum increase in value, you're going to experience upside and you're also going to experience downside. So you have to look at both markets to really understand the value of a Bitcoin and Ethereum paired pool. What's notable is the same the same description applies to this type of pool as well, as with Ethereum and DAI. You're going to have muted upside, restricted downside, exchanging it for a recurring revenue stream. Absolutely incredible. And the third is Bancor, which changes really everything. All three of these pools have a meaningful part in a well-structured portfolio, specifically with regard to your risk consideration. Before I can proceed, let me look over and make sure what I'm missing in the stream. I want to get to make sure I address as many questions as possible. Charlie G, hit them likes. 56 people in the stream, 23 likes. We can do better. Bitta, I have no idea what you just said. I try my best. I'm happy to answer any questions, always. So just start from the foundation, build the concepts and the ideology, and questions, because when you're able to ask yourself questions, and you can ask other people questions like me. That's how you go from step to step to step to improve capacity to allocate value strategically. Um, uh, Pulling preferred over buy low, sell high. Sure, and that is exactly the gist of it. I have no interest in buying low, selling high. Clearly, I have in the past, and I still do. Occasionally I take a risk-on position because I expect something to significantly outperform. Maybe something is in a very strategic technical position where the chart indicates there's going to be a break to the upside of meaningful proportions, and it's an opportunity. But you have to consider risk. That if you own an asset like that. That's a risk on play, which means you have risk of depreciation, and that's full exposure to full upside and downside appreciation or depreciation, which is something I want to avoid. And once you make a certain amount of capital, you want to avoid risk at all costs, and the appropriate portfolio strategy is literally just risk management. And that's an interesting way to start thinking about things. Uh, could you touch on how much gas recommend to use their curve? Yeah, so gas is extremely expensive, but what you need to consider is chi on 1 inch exchange. You're talking about like a 75% reduction in gas expenditures, and that's just extraordinary. So it's expensive. You're going to spend money on chi, but it's going to be cheaper than gas. And when you have 1,000 Gwei type of events, for the love of God, don't do transactions during these type of events. You need to be prepared, and you need to have these types of portfolio considerations throughout the entirety of your value allocation process, such that when these events occur, you were prepared. And if these events occurred and you weren't prepared, now is the time to prepare for the inevitable next event. Santiago's in the house. I'm honored. I really am. It's just you're someone I look up to. So I really appreciate it. That's so cool. My concern is custody of a digital asset with counterparty risk. Sure, and that's a risk. And that's extremely pertinent. And this is why we diversify. So just because there's extraordinary opportunity in the DeFi space, this is why you don't allocate everything to a single position, one, a single protocol, two, get out of the DeFi space, should be allocated to the CeFi space as well, talking about BlockFi, Celsius, so on and so forth. And you also should have cold custody as well. You should have assets that are set aside that are it's not risk off because you are still applied to a full exposure to these assets with extreme volatility, but you have eliminated the risk of counterparty risk, and that's pertinent. So all aspects of a portfolio, it's all about balance. It's all about how much risk you're taking in order to generate capital. And if you take no risk, you're going to generate no capital. And frankly, in today's day and age, if you take no risk and you're in fiat, you're going to lose about 15% per year to real yields if you keep it in a bank. Can you believe it? The interest rates on a bank are about minus 15% probably in real yield because of inflation, and they give you absolutely no return on your money. So there's an immense amount of risk that's actually guaranteed to hit your portfolio if you do nothing, which actually means we are forced to take action and allocate value strategically, as intelligently and as risk considerate as possible. Otherwise, not just mathematically, empirically, we are guaranteed to lose value. So we have to do this. You have to allocate value outside of fiat. Sure, fiat has its purpose, as Rohan talks about all the time. It's a perfect unit of account to settle debts, and that's just extraordinary. But and it's also a value transfer vehicle. So, but it's not a value storage vehicle. So, I've said it before. Fiat does not constitute money anymore. Money requires a capacity to store value, so it doesn't even meet the definition of money anymore. Santiago says, "Thanks for the great stream. I hope it helps." And the whole point is, I'm sharing my journey and my the skills I've acquired over the past couple of years and capacity to manage a portfolio strategically and intelligently for myself, and I hope it helps folks because folks FOMO and folks often prevailing retail participants don't have strategy. They buy something and hope that it goes up. But active portfolio management is not about hope. It's about learning and growing and exposing yourself to other people that have great ideology and brilliant years and years of experience. And you got to hit up Real Vision. You got to follow Santiago on Twitter, and you got to listen to him speak because I think I speak well. Santiago's on another level. I'm just serious. Charlie loves solid advice. I still have to learn to do it, but I feel more confident I will learn it here than anywhere else. There's many places to learn. I'm far from the pinnacle of a place to learn everything. And in fact, I'm like an aggregator. I'm the 1 inch of YouTube streams maybe because I've learned everything that I have clearly from my own personal experience, but it's from Real Vision and it's from other brilliant minds and contrarian thinkers. And what I've done is I've taken all these ideas and I've digested them and I've created my own framework and ideology that has provided me a capacity to tell a story of the path that I've chosen to take and the choices that I've chosen to make. Protect your gains, boys and girls. I'm serious. Pellets wants me on Real Vision. I'd be an honor, and that's to say the least. And I think I know more and more people are watching the stream, and I can only hope to help people. I think that in the end, I often tell my wife it's all about purpose, and I think this is a very honorable purpose, and I'd like to make a difference. I see what people are doing in the retail space in the broad inflated tech equities market, and it's sad because you know what's sad about it? Tesla's an incredible company, and they're going to change the world. Their stock has nothing to do with the company, and a tragedy is inevitable. And even if it's not inevitable, it's perverted. And that makes me feel bad. I get a lot of feelings about that. Wow, the stream's on fire today. What are your thoughts on Reflexer, F-back non-peg stablecoin? I do not know anything about it. Watch your risk with these. A lot of the stablecoin assets, especially the rebalancing ones. It's hard to wrap your head around the dynamics of the protocol properties and how the rebalancing, which is basically an adjustment of supply, affects price action. So we've seen some incredible volatility in a lot of those assets, which means there's a lot of risk. Minimize your risk. Be more strategic. ZK swap, I've seen it. I shy away from a lot of the new protocols. This is all brand new, boys and girls. We're talking about May of last year that these protocols started gaining millions of dollars, and now these protocols are in the tune of billions of dollars. So that brings up a good point. Protocols like Curve, 1 inch Uniswap, they have billions and billions of dollars applied to them, and they are not startups anymore. These are not kids just sitting around playing with Solidity and Viper programming languages. Curve, they have so much revenue and a revenue sharing program, but the point being, they're some of the smartest people on the planet, and their protocols are extraordinarily well thought out, intelligently crafted, filled with monetary policy that far exceeds the capacity of the Federal Reserve, and they're dealing with Stablecoins, dollars, they're the forex of the crypto space. 1 inch exchange is full on corporate, and I know that anecdotally because when they first launched, it was built in a hackathon, so they're brilliant. One, two, they were very big on social media. Those boys, and there came a time where they went silent. So, and we've heard hints, I believe, of funding, if I recall correctly. Those boys are corporate. They have big funding, big money, and they have some of the best monetary policy, I think, in the crypto space, and particularly the DeFi space. And that's really the story that's emerging here. Uniswap, they have billions of dollars in treasury. They have never had a revenue sharing program, so their goal is actually decentralization. Uniswap is non-regulatable. They are so aggressively decentralized. Their V1 protocol is still online, and they have put so much effort into decentralization. There is nothing that anyone could do about that protocol technologically without shutting off the internet. Incredible. I can't even keep up with the stream anymore. And let me hit a couple. Let me hit a couple, and I'll tell a couple of stories. Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. Andrew, yep, I've learned so much from Noah. I just found him a week ago. I was somewhat ready for today because of him. Yeah, today was an incredible day. The volatility was extraordinary. And when you're properly positioned with a respectful portfolio, respect your portfolio, it will respect you. Events like today, you look at the macro landscape, let's just say crypto-centric macro landscape, it's bullish, and especially with the candle that printed. Oh my God. So it's a hammer candle because you could see that the close was a little bit before the most previous open or the previous close. If this printed green or if it just printed a couple of ticks higher, it would have been definitely a Dragonfly Doji. So there is definitely room for some more depreciation. But for a person that myself, I don't mind. I know where things are heading in the future. The macro landscape, especially when you get into the dollar and you're talking about the long end of the curve. Look at this dollar. Is this bearish or what? I mean, seriously, you got a head and shoulders. You can barely get above the 50 SMA on the daily. Yeah, this is going to go lower. But this is also scary. And then we get into the whole social stability conversations and disparity and whatnot. I don't want to deviate too far from how we're heading today. Any thoughts on PMGT gold token? I don't. Oh, Perth Mint. Interesting. So gold is getting hammered. If you look at the charts, Nasdaq has destroyed, significantly outperformed gold, like significantly outperformed silver. But then it gets complicated. We have a whole mean regression that's likely inevitable, and I really think allocating value towards commodities, mining in particular, and metals and the crypto space. That's where the great value allocation theory or ideology I have comes to mind. Um, Mining is probably going to turn into the new growth. And much like Raul talks about emerging markets, I think mining is just going to print money for the next 10 years. That's just my feeling. We were talking about battery metal miners and probably commodity miners as well, because asset price inflation you're going to see the flip on stuff like copper, and it's just going to go vertical. Um, that's just what I see happening, and that's part of the commodity supercycle narrative, and it makes logical sense. And you're talking about battery metals, lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite. That stuff is just going to be in so much demand. Every car manufacturer is flipping the electrification switch. But here's the kicker, and this is why I'm heavily skewed towards battery metal mining. Um, the car market will be 2%. Follow Simon Moores on Twitter. The car market will be about 2% of the battery mining metals requirement by 2030. 2%. And all car manufacturers are going to flip to electrification. So where's the 98%? You're talking about electrical grids. You're talking about literally infrastructure for corporate towers getting off the grid. And this is about reliability, stability, independence, so on and so forth. Self electrical production, solar, and storage. Produce solar during the day, store it for night consumption. You need the battery metals. And the reason why I have a 10-year time horizon on these types of materials is for the same reason how TV manufacturers operate, for example. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of infrastructure over the last 10 years that have gone into creating the mining and refining systems needed for the markets. And they're not going to leapfrog to the next battery tech. You always consume the status quo technology to the fullest extent of profitability. So you're not going to just abandon Giga Nevada and all this battery tech. And there's like 137 gigafactories, uh, referring to a gigawatt of battery storage capacity around the world. Follow Simon Moore's. He'll speak to it much better than I and tell you the actual numbers. The demand for battery metals is going to be vertical, if not already is. And I've showed you some stuff. Uh, I showed you that chart that was up 1,400%, and it's just going to keep going. What was that? Piedmont? That Piedmont Lithium? No, that was American Manganese, AMY. Oh, my keyboard. I'll show you this real quick. We have a minute. AMY. I mean, you got to see this chart, guys. This is indicative of really what's going to play out in the next decade. For the last years, I've been in this thing since 2016. It's basically horizontal, but they have relationships with national labs. They have technology that's patented, and you're talking about this is recycling. This is dealing with battery metals recycling. So you're talking about a dip or whatever it is. This is one extraordinary volatility, but this is indicative of what's going to happen over the next 10 years. I mean, it was a 1,450% rip in 2021. We'll check back in 2030 for my gut instinct. You see if my gut instinct is right. BNT F charts look bullish, Andrew. BNT, I think, has incredible monetary policy. Here, I'll delve into the monetary policy real quick. So we don't need to criticize the Federal Reserve's monetary policy because it's just straight up inflationary. But what DeFi has created is novel monetary policy, and they've experimented with it. And over the past years, have empirically proven one, sustainability, two, creation of value, and it's more than just that because these assets that they've created, these LP assets contributing to a liquidity pool, also facilitate the capitalization on volatility from transaction fees. So you have two components to the yield that are available from these LP providers: transaction fee revenue and incentives. The incentives are extraordinary because that drives monetary velocity, that drives a deflationary pressure, and that drives participation. That also basically locks value in. There's no reason to leave. I've said it before. This time is different. It's not 2017 and 2018. What was created and empirically proven to be the case in 2020, basically starting in May, um, was the introduction and validation of systems that have created novel monetary policy. So clearly, it's not fiat. It's not money per se, but they're dealing with monetary policy, which has psychological effects on persons, on market actors, that drives behavioral choices. And that's incredible. There's no other way to say it. So these protocol properties basically have decaying inflationary curves. And there was actually a really great paper that was sent to the St. Louis Fed like 2-3 weeks ago that talked all about this. It was really cool. It's published by the St. Louis Fed. These novel monetary policy implementations. So you have predominantly decaying inflationary curves. Uh, Balanced by deflationary pressures. So and we'll know more how these policies will evolve because they're iterative, they're not static, they're mutable, and we'll know more in a year or two. But as of now, the decaying inflationary curve, coupled with a very powerful deflationary pressure, makes the protocols extremely stable, driving value in, encouraging participation, preventing outflow, all while allowing participants to generate significant yield without diluting overwhelmingly pool yields, albeit as more liquidity piles into the space, pool yields are inevitable to be diluted, which is good, and that'll be healthy. We shouldn't have 110, 120% yield. Interestingly enough, it's sustainable, but it should be diluted because that reward, those gains, need to be spread around, and they will be. But the transaction fees, I don't. That's an interesting one to think about how dilution will play out because the transaction fees should theoretically just keep increasing as more and more participants need to get in and out of assets and balance portfolios and just operate within a functional market. So there's going to be significant double-digit returns, I think, for a long time, just at the transaction fee level. The opportunity here is paramount. What is the opportunity? I don't speak towards taking particular investment actions, but the opportunity here is to start to understand what has been produced, why it's being produced, the role it plays relative to the legacy financial system, why and how it's sustainable, and just also with regard to how you could be involved with choices and decisions for your own portfolio to make good choices, lucrative choices, because there's no perfect way to have a portfolio. You can't just pile into Curve. You can't just pile into 1inch or Bancor. You can't just pile into Aave, which is basically a money market that has a banking license in the UK. It was just crazy. But because you have risk consideration. So portfolio structure needs to carry significant risk consideration. And the wealthy, I would argue, that's their job, risk management. So you got to diversify across a couple of different portfolio protocols. You also should stick to the ones that have billions of dollars of liquidity, that have corporate and billions of dollars worth of bank in their treasury, because those are the smartest people on the planet. And teams like Curve and 1inch and Uniswap and Bancor, they're going to be titans of industry. You've seen pictures of Jobs and Musk when they were kids, and Bezos in a tiny little office. This is what's happening. You're watching the birth of a sustainable, vibrant ecosystem that has vertical monetary velocity. Monetary velocity is most broadly described as borrowing and lending, and that creates value. And George Gammon talks about how that works at the fiat level with banks and the Federal Reserve and liabilities and deposits and banknotes and all that bullshit. But point being, monetary velocity is everything, because monetary velocity, one, creates value, two, drives opportunity, and encourages participation. So what does all that mean? The vertical monetary velocity in the DeFi space is just going to keep drawing in more and more liquidity because there's actual opportunity. And this is just basic human behavior. In the face of opportunity, people are going to abandon systems that are not outperforming. Money flows from underperforming to outperforming assets, and it'll do the same for underperforming to outperforming systems. And always remember, money flows from overinflated assets to underinflated assets. In the process of mean regression, it works both ways, from the top down and the bottom up. Always remember that. I cannot even begin to try and keep up with the stream comments today. 62 people on the stream, 36 likes. We can do better. I love it. Let me see if I can get a couple of last minute comments at the bottom, and we'll wrap up today's show, 12:07 p.m. Ben says, Bancor is an AMM like Uniswap. Bancor is an AMM like Uniswap, but has extraordinarily different protocol properties. Bancor has impermanent loss protection and facilitates single-sided exposure to an asset, which means from a risk management perspective, you will experience full upside, full downside in exchange for, in addition to transaction fees as well as protocol incentives. So it has a part of the portfolio, and it's new. Their protocol has just launched, and there's still more to do. But the empirical data that is available shows that the inflation used to facilitate the protocol incentives is balanced by a deflationary burn component. So you have a balanced inflation and deflation, balanced inflationary and deflationary forces, which prevent excessive dilution of the total asset supply, thus capping or restricting the normal effect of inflation on an asset. That's crazy. The Federal Reserve can't do anything like this. They'd have to literally break down traditional banking rails and go totalitarian, which is basically what China's doing with the digital yuan. And now we get into like really geopolitical conversations about, uh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But the digital yuan is really going to drive a big part of the financial narrative for sovereigns around the world. Because how the hell do you compete with unlimited digital central bank credit? And that's what China's positioning themselves to do. Craig, last comment. Thank you for your videos. I'm new to your channel, but I have been hooked on DGB since I learned about it. Which video do you recommend for me? Procedure, stake yield, and diversify. Bankless HQ. I'm not going to get into tutorials. I much prefer the broad macro perspective and talking about these grandiose topics and theories and ideology and structure and so on and so forth. But Bankless HQ and DeFi Dad have great tutorials that talk about this stuff, and that is the way I think things will proceed. Ben says, thank you all very much. Today has been an incredible day. I know we had a massive liquidity event this morning, and now is a better time than ever to think about more sophisticated ways to manage value and to just take it to a next level and not just buy and hodl. It's going to burn a lot of people, and it's going to be very destructive to a lot of people with the broadly inflated equities market that are buying absolutely world-changing companies, but for completely technical reasons and physical, physical properties such as gravity. Mean regression is going to destroy a lot of people's financial well-being. And that's just unfortunate. And there's a lot of assets like that in the crypto space. We have mean regressions all the time. That's basically what happened this morning. I'll cap things off with my favorite Bitcoin versus NASDAQ chart. I don't really look at Bitcoin versus the dollar anymore. NASDAQ was the one of the most largely inflated markets on the planet before, but now Bitcoin has just started to inflate as compared to NASDAQ. I'll zoom out to the weekly and I'll give you guys the big perspective. So this is got a little overlap on drawing, but this should suffice. So back in 2017, we have this peak. And Bitcoin has basically just broken out. I mean, a breakout is basically a breakthrough resistance to the upside, a retest, and a fresh higher high. And that's the way you look for confluence, technical confluence, to suggest there's meaningful reason to expect a bullish continuation. So if you look at the percent gains, I don't have the percent meter up right now, but if you look at the percent gains back in 2017 versus NASDAQ, it's about 833%. So about 8 times the size of NASDAQ, Bitcoin blew a bubble to. So these are bubbles, and that doesn't mean a bad thing. It's hyperbole the way so many folks talk about these topics. A crash isn't a crash. It's a value redistribution process. It's a mean regression process, or an inevitable mean regression process. But avoid the hyperbole. So an interesting one is food memes and farming. It's hyperbole. It's a red herring. To understand what's going on in DeFi, you have to understand monetary policy, inflation, deflation, incentive systems, and a good bit of human psychology. But Bitcoin has this happened last week, just broken out against NASDAQ. Bitcoin, if you look at Bitcoin versus any market pretty much on the planet I could think of, I've looked at gold, silver, TLT, Bitcoin is outperforming everything. And this was the big piece of the puzzle. I would argue that against NASDAQ, this is the most important one because the quants on Wall Street will see this. the quants will see that a Bitcoin is outperforming NASDAQ, and they're going to go to their executives, and executives will see that they've allocated to an underperforming asset. And the natural human response is to take value that's underperforming and reallocate it towards an outperforming asset class. And that's part of really the great value reallocation ideology that I talk about. Brad, thank you too. Thank you very much. Lewis, Craig, Curtis, Google, YouTube, Noah, Simon, staking yield. So I've talked about a couple of topics. I've talked about some, I've given some tutorials, but I didn't really dive into it too much. And going forward, my storytelling is really how I'm going to continue the stream. So I thank you all for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I hope I help. 12:14 p.m. Monday, February 22nd. I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we will do this again tomorrow. Peace.